Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian, and joining me, as always, is your co-host, Jim.
Not dead yet, but I'm working on it.
Bit by bit. Oh, really? Oh, yeah, you were sick last week. That's right. Right. Are you feeling better this week?
I'm getting there.
Also joining us is your co-host, Hunter.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what season it is because my allergies have been going freaking haywire.
Oh, really?
Right behind Jim. I'm not dead yet. Yeah, man. It's like it keeps like sweeping back and forth between like spring, fall, and winter up here, man. Like the other week it was 30 degrees. Today it was like 65 and humid.
Wow, it was actually warmer there than it was here today.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Like it's pretty gnarly. Like, yeah, I don't like it. It's been crazy because like flowers are starting to like rebloom and stuff.
Oh,
like
no.
That, so it's crazy.
They're probably as confused as you are. Sadly, Spaz is not joining us because he's sick. Poor guy. Everyone's getting sick.
He's closer to being dead than we are.
Yeah, my wife is getting the thing now, but she's an elementary school teacher, so she gets all the things. Oh my God. Like the first few years she taught, she was just always sick. Just constantly 10 months out of the year sick.
Just like sleep in a vat of like hand sanitizer.
Oh my God. Like it took, I think, about 6 years of teaching for her immune system to finally protect her and not have her be sick all the time. So, folks, we have a guest this week. Oh, Joshua Walker, where are you in the world?
I am in southeast Wisconsin.
Ooh, okay. So how's the weather? Is the weather been crazy over there too? Weather side note.
It is. Well, first of all, I am shockingly healthy. And
it's all the cheese.
No, I live right by Lake Michigan, so our weather in the winter is weird already when you have a gigantic warm piece of lake that's sitting right next to it. So we just had our storm come through, which was kind of like the first one, but it's been pretty mild. It's not. I've seen worse, but it's pretty okay.
That's not bad. I'm glad you're well enough to be with us, or else we'd have a problem because we scheduled this whole show around you. So, folks, we are here tonight to talk about. This is an interesting thing. So, back in 1991, the folks at Omnitrend already had 3 games under their belt called Universe, and they were these crazy complex space trading games. I've tried to play them and I can't. Even with the manual, I'm like, what am I doing? They're like the epitome of 80s UI jank. Like so crazy to play.
Wait, you mean it's crazier UI than this game?
This game is an elegant piece of art compared to those games. I am not even kidding. Those games are crazy convoluted. I've tried playing all 3 of them, and you would think they might get easier, or more like elegant as they go from 1 to 2 to 3. Nope, they do not. They are just. It was the 80s too. No one really knew how to make a UI. Like, what's a UI? So thank God the 90s happened. Yeah, yep. Thank God the 90s happened, right? So in 1991, a game in that same universe came out called Rules of Engagement. And that was, and still really is, one of the most detailed tactical starship combat games you will ever find. I mean, I think the only things that even come close are like Battlecruiser 3000 and Klingon Academy. And then you go down a notch and maybe you have Starfleet Command and then maybe Independence War. Like, this is really like a level of fidelity that you will not really find in many other games. And so there were 2 games that came out. This one, the first one in 1991, and then Rules of Engagement 2 came out in 1993. That one was published by Impressions, which I thought was funny, who went on to make all the great city builders. But this one came out in 1991, and about 2 or 3 months ago, I found out that someone had gone through all the trouble to make a Windows port of the damn thing.
Yep.
Like,
Why
took this,
would anyone do that?
took this near 30-year-old DOS game, or Amiga game. It was also on the Amiga. There's a name I've not heard in a long time. And ported it to frickin'
Amiga,
Windows.
I hardly know you.
Oh, God, son of... God damn it. So, once I found out this thing existed, first I had to buy it. It's $5 on itch, people. If you have any interest in this stuff, go frickin' buy it. And then find the manual. The manuals, some of the best manuals you will ever read.
The game does actually come with a manual.
Oh, does it? Oh, okay.
Yep, it's
in there?
It's
okay.
hitting. Yeah, it's hiding out in the program files folder where the executable is.
Oh,
so
okay.
There's like a little README in there because that's where I kind of keep notes for how to theme the system. How I took the original when I got the original package from Omnitrend, they had the manual source in PageMaker 3 format.
Oh my
God!
God.
Had not seen anything since I think the Mac 2 IC.
PageMaker 3. Jeez, there's another blast from the past. Oh my God!
So I had to convert that. I had to upconvert that all the way up to PDF, which is what it is now. And that was an adventure of itself. There's just inside the game. There's all these archaic systems inside that are just. I had to contain it, change it into something more contemporary, and get it so the program could understand it, and things like that. But that's getting into sort of the mid development stuff, and I can start like at the beginning.
We want to start at the beginning. So
the beginning of the nuts and everything.
So what is your history? Well, first off, let's start at the very beginning. What is your history with the actual Rules of Engagement game? Like, did you play it back in the day? Is it something you found later?
I played Rules of Engagement originally on an IBM 8088 with a grayscale Hercules monitor running a CGA emulator so I could actually see the CGA graphics on a Hercules screen. So it was amber.
Wow! I am fanning myself. Myself
with a single floppy drive, a single 5 1/4.
Damn.
And that was my first computer I ever had. And one of the things that I think was most awesome about it was I blew into my blog about in my little dev blog about it, is before when I had the Atari 2600, I had a game called Star Raiders. And it was like a simulation game where you piloted your ship and you had like the galactic map and everything.
Oh, we're well aware of that game. Absolutely.
When I was a kid, I made pillow forts. I made pillow fort cockpits. So I would have like the recliner chair and the joystick between my legs, and I would have like the TV, draped over the TV set, so it was my main screen, and the blanket, isolated me from the rest of the world. I played Star Raiders on that. So I had the view screen and everything like that. Turns out I'm not the only person who did that. A lot of people used to play the game like that too when they were kids. Mm-hmm. And so what happened was that when I played Rules of Engagement, at the time Next Gen was out, and you can see all the Next Gen.
Oh my God, this is so Next Gen. This is so LCARS. This is like LCARS at the yin yang.
It is way LCARS. And so one of the things I used to do is when I played the game, it was amber anyway, so it kind of matched the motif of the Star Trek show. And I would move the mouse around and I would touch the screen. Even touching the screen didn't do anything. It still was fun to pretend that I was touching the interface and playing the game that way. And it was just one of those ones where it came with a solar system editor, with a ship editor, with a mission editor. So the editors were built into it,
which is kind of amazing because the only way you could really exchange those things was like bulletin boards and CompuServe. or if you knew someone else who had the game nearby, yeah, give them a floppy.
So I would like to know why nobody in how many years, what's it been since like 94, 95, that anybody has made any kind of Star Raiders remake, right? Interactive Magic made that Space Rangers or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Star.
Well, I mean, right now, I mean, you can see its influence in like Elite and Elite Dangerous, where
you can see it, but I just want somebody to actually remake that game, not the BS Star Raiders title that Atari stuck on whatever the hell that thing was that was unplayable a few years ago, but the actual deal, like, it's a dynamic map, you got to jump around, right? Did you ever play the interactive Magic one?
No, I only had the 2600 version.
Oh, you should track down it's abandonware. It runs beautifully in DOSBox, called Star Rangers, and if you like Star Raiders, you will love this. Except for the sound effects.
With roguelike elements to it,
I know.
It randomly generates the maps.
I know there was a sequel too. There's Star Raiders 2, which came out. Actually, the Atari 2600 version is actually
last Starfighter on the Atari 800 is what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, because you have the 2600 version of Star Raiders I know was actually cut down from the actual version of Star Raiders that ran on the Atari 800. So
okay, so you did play this at the time, and I'm sure you. I'm guessing you played the sequel as well.
I did, but I didn't like the sequel as much. And when I was talking with the original developer, he said that it was, they kind of overreached a little when they made the sequel for it, because ROE was already complicated enough with its interface, but they kind of doubled down on that and made it like the Foursquare deal. Where
the Foursquare thing, panels. I think through a lot. So, folks, by the way, if you've not played this game, it's broken into several screens at the top: navigation, communication, tactical, and data. Where and they all take up a separate screen by themselves. But in the sequel, it's a 4-panel job, and you can break these up into 4 separate panels, and it made the game even more complicated than this.
Yeah, it would have been better if you would have taken like the second one and maybe even laid out all the panels on one screen. It might be kind of cool, but for reasons I didn't license the second one, I only did the first one. So, that was all I really could, I guess, quote unquote, afford to do. That was the experiment. Yeah. So yeah. Go ahead.
No. So where did the idea come from to port this to Windows?
Okay, so here's the thing. I went to I saw a GDC talk, and I don't have it off the top of my fingers right now, but one of the things that is a problem in today's programming landscape is that you have a lot of companies that do not like emulation on their platforms at all. Like, it's banned. Apple and Nintendo are the biggies that don't like it. So if you have a program that you need to port to those platforms, they do not want to have an emulator running on it, because if that emulator gets broken, you can run unsigned code on it. Now, keep in mind, it's unsigned code in an emulator, but that still violates the license agreement. So they keep
like how they snuck MAME in on iOS.
It's how there's also a guy who snuck Python into a Switch game, and he thought it was just to educate kids how to use Python, and didn't realize that he violated the licensing contract, and he got fired for it. What? Because you were able to run unsigned code on the Switch, even though it was in a sandbox. And he was even on Twitter saying it's a sandbox Python environment. Nothing's going to break. Don't worry about it. And Nintendo's like, nope. The license says you can't run unsigned code on our platform. Period.
Well, right? Their big fear is if you can run unsigned code, then you can use that to sideload that.
Yeah, but he said it's a sandbox. But I think it's even just coding in general. They don't want, if you code on their platform, they want to cut out the licensing deals. You know what I mean? So there was a guy who ported Mega Man, and he was talking about how they had to reverse engineer Mega Man and then recompile it in order to get it to run on platforms because the licensing agreement simply wouldn't let them use an emulator at all. And I thought this is an interesting opportunity. I thought maybe we have some of these old DOS games back in the day that are really, really, fun to play. Wouldn't it be kind of cool to kind of get them a little bit of a facelift, port them off the Windows, revive the source code, because the source code is, you have something called code death, where if you don't do anything with your source code for a while, it just starts to decay. And then after a while, it's so dead, you can't do anything with it. Really? So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to get this back up, take the effort to revitalize the code, get it viable again, so I can get it onto a platform and then push it off to someplace. And hey, if anything, I learned practice about taking old code and putting it into new code. I'll get practice about how to take code that should be emulated and, get it onto normal platforms. And I can use that skill to further on my programming career, such and such and who and who.
So how did you get this code? And first off, I'm shocked that the source code was even still existent for this thing.
I was too, and this is how I got it. So while I was thinking about this, I was working IT at a major insurance company. I had just become hired on as a full-time employee, and through circumstances beyond everybody's control, they wound up letting go their IT team, for lots of different reasons. However, it came down to the fact that they basically audited where I worked. They found out that it was cheaper for my desk to be in India than in Wisconsin, and I was given a severance check and let go. That severance check was generous, so I had a budget, and it was a couple of figure budget that I had that I could either take that, invest it into a 401k, get another job, blah blah blah, or I could do with a budget something I always wanted to do. I had an idea, I had the means now, so let's go. That was my idea, right? So it just happened to be serendipity at the time. I had a project idea, I had funding for it, and no strings attached, just go. Let's see what happens. So what happened was I was thinking, well, if I was going to port a DOS game, what game did I love to play when I was a kid? I remember Rules of Engagement. That was made by Omnitrend. So I looked online. I just went to omnitrend.com and see if they even existed. And they do. It's still there. And they had moved on a long time ago to like doing cell tower audit software or some, thing else, right? They got out of the game business. And so the only thing they had on their website was a simple info@omnitrend.com. And I thought, well, wouldn't hurt. I'm going to see if they have the source code. I mean, who knows, right? It might have changed hands, some, policies, whatever, right? So I wrote an email saying, basically stating my position. I'm a programmer. I like your game. I have funding. I'd love to port your game to Windows for these particular reasons. Why? Do you guys even have the source code? I mean, you may not even know you made games before. Who knows, right? And so I sent the email off thinking, oh, whatever. I'll hunt around for other games if I can't find something. And I got an email back from the president of the company. And the president said, I wrote that game. It was Tom Crambone, the guy who wrote the game. And he's like, I wrote that game. We tried to get it on GOG. They wouldn't take it because it ran like garbage in an emulator, which it does. And
did it?
Or there's problems with it. There's problems with it in the emulator. And also it was so archaic that GOG just passed on it. And so I pitched it. I said, well, let me port it to Windows and see what I can do. And so he sent me some sample code, asked me my evaluation of it. I evaluated it and said, yeah, I think I can port this. And then we made a licensing deal on it with incredibly uneven because it's his code. So it wasn't a very great licensing deal. His cut versus my cut, but I got the source code, whatever. I get to practice it. I have funding, no big deal, right? I've already been paid. So, I have the money, so don't worry about it. So I grabbed the code and he sent me like everything. He sent me like prototype code. He sent me the software from the PageMaker manuals. He sent me like what looked like presentations or meeting notes. I had Excel spreadsheets of budgets, and I kind of got rid of that because that was PII. But he just sent me the whole kit and caboodle. It was like when the game shipped, what was ever on the hard drive, he just sent to me, and I dug through the code, found the latest version of it because there's several versions on there, and took the original like 26C files and pulled that kicking and screaming into GitHub
Did it like freak out when you were linking it or what?
Linking it was its own special basket case because like I said, there's paradigms that were not in that code that we simply just do not use anymore. And it was only by this.
Explain linking for people that don't know.
So in a game, or actually any application, you have two different ways of splitting your code up or not. Computers like to share code. So like when you write a program with a window, this window looks like that window, especially with Windows, right? There's a GDI DLL. That's a library of functions that draws windows and buttons. And so if you use that library, all the buttons are consistent across all of your applications. So you reuse its code. And there is something called static linking, where you take all these functions and keep it in one monolithic program. Or you have dynamic linking, which you will have these DLLs, which are like little functions, little parts of the program that the computer can call out and reuse from time to time, and other programs can also reuse these functions as well. However, rules of engagement use something called overlay linking, which is something we don't do anymore. And that was trick number one. Overlay linking, as opposed to like dynamic linking, where you have the core program and then all the like graphic functions or keyboard functions or things that get reused over and over, they're external to the program. Overlay linking has all the core functions that never gets out of memory, and it banks in and out parts of the program. So it's backwards from how you actually link something. So Nintendo games, like the NES games, used to do this. So there's no actual main loop to the program. The game's actually a gigantic state machine, except for this little function that kind of keeps the universe up to date. So that's just a generic overview. So I had to change it so it would link properly. So I have my graphics library, which is Allegro, and that's what's dynamically linked now. But that's one of the things that was different, is it uses overlinking as opposed to static or dynamic linking. Another issue was that it did something called KNRC, and it was only by the saving grace that Microsoft. Oh my God! I'm sorry. I'm opening up a can of worms here.
Go for it. Do it, man. Do it. We want to hear it all.
So Microsoft Visual Studio is a C++ compiler, right? And Microsoft, as of very recently, or Microsoft for the longest time had deprecated their C compiler. Now, C++ and C are cousins each other. You can compile C code and C++ except for some caveats, but for the most part, they're both basically the same language. Just one's an object-oriented version of the other. And Microsoft never updated their C to pass C99, which is a C standard that came out in 1999. They just deprecated it, and they kept on using the C++ versions and added functionality to that part of their compiler. There is something called...
Did you end up having to like take it over to Linux where there's still GCC?
No, because Microsoft had neglected their C compiler for so long, it actually worked because the code uses something called KNR function declarations, which are different than your normal C declaration. You don't declare your types inside your function declarations, and their C was so old, it actually recognized it, because after C99, they kind of told everybody they deprecated that type of declarations. So the way that functions were called were just so old that I had to change all of those so that it'd show up in IntelliSense so that I could see what functions there were. So that was one of the saving graces, that because Microsoft neglected their C for so long, it actually could read this old format and be able to compile it. After changing all the functions and getting it all to run, or getting it all to compile, I had 976 warnings. And from there, it was simply going to the core, the actual core graphic library, and just replacing those function after function after function after function. And that's really all I had to change. The code itself was so bulletproof, except for, some of the more archaic pointer stuff. Once I got sort of the graphic library kind of ported over to Allegro, which was my graphic platform, it just started working. And there's some caveats that I had to kind of deal with. For example, I had to port it to, the original game had 16 colors and it actually could use palettes. I couldn't use palettes because I'm using 32-bit graphics, so, they're just true color. Other things I had to do was I increased the resolution by 4 times. So it went from 320 by 200 to 1280 by 800. And one of the things that was interesting is that if you do the math, 320 by 200 is actually 16 by 10 resolution. It's a 16 by 10 aspect ratio. It wasn't 16 by 10 in DOS because 320 by 200, EGA, VGA, and CJ, EJ, and VGA used non-square pixels. So it was 4 by 3, even though it was 320 by 200. So it stretches it out, but unfortunately, however, 16 by 10 doesn't really fit real hot on a 16 by 9 screen. So if you play the game now, I have this really cool rotating background border to kind of fill that area if you're playing the game in native resolution. So that's one of the things I had to do with it, but it was just every little there's just these little archaic things that I had to update and upgrade. The program loop was the biggest, because the way the game works is in a normal computer, you have a program loop, you have a main loop. And basically the main loop starts with taking input, changing the game, and rendering the output, and then flipping back and taking the input, changing the variables, rendering the game, and then back again, right? So that's kind of like the flow, A, B, C. The game itself used a hardware interrupt, physically from the interrupt chip on an IBM PC.
Wait, what?
And so it was crazy. There is this
little
function.
Wait a minute.
So there's no main function, right? There is an interrupt that fires every 15 milliseconds. And so whatever the game is doing, it will stop and then service this interrupt every 15 milliseconds. And all this interrupt does is update the universe. So the universe is running in this little 15 millisecond loop, updating where the missiles are, where the ships are, what the state of the communications is, where the ships are going. Everything about the universe is held in this gigantic global heap.
Yeah, and thank God they didn't tie it to frame rate.
No, they didn't.
Because then you'd have a game that would run 1,000 times speed.
Yeah, and that was a problem with me when I actually changed it over. But what happens then is when you play the game and you switch to one of those screens, what it's doing in the original game was it would bank out that old screen, bank in a new one, because the universe is still running in the background, and then it will pull all the information from the universe and display it on that screen, just like a spaceship would, right? So it's actually each one of those little windows, or each one of those little functions are actually pulling from the universe what its state is, and then displaying that particular data from the gigantic data heap that it has. And so it's a state machine. Every screen is a different state that you pull up, and then the game, for all intents and purposes, freezes, except every 15 milliseconds, this little interrupt will run, update the universe, and then give control back to the input. So it was kind of multitasking in a way. So when I ported the game over, I had to emulate that thread. Now, what we do is you would just make it a thread and give it to a CPU, right? The CPU could run that thread in the background as its own little universe, and then we could pick up the information from whatever that thread updates. However, it wasn't thread safe, so it would immediately crash because, inside that function, inside the little interrupt function, it would draw on the screen. And you can't really be inside the screen draw function, have the interrupt call, and then have it run the screen draw function. It would smash the system or put weird stuff on your screen. So a thread was out. So I was super stuck for the longest time trying to figure out how to emulate this interrupt. And it turns out that there was this other program, this PCX, when I was complaining to other devs about the problem I had with this overlay linked application that I was trying to port. There was a guy who ported a PCX paint editor, like this old ancient DOS PCX editor, to Linux. And he showed me how he did it because it used exactly the same linking system. I'm like, oh, okay. So I just have to insert the functions in critical areas and have it service in a loop. I had to very creatively insert in a software. I had the software implement the interrupt basically to get it to work function. And even then, though, when I I have a limiter in there, so there is a frame rate lock on it. Because I had to put one on, because if I didn't put the frame rate limiter on it, then the game itself would actually call this function every 15 milliseconds, and the CPU usage would just go through the roof because it's constantly making the simple call over and over and over again every 15. So I had to make sure it was like, hold on, wait a frame, service the interrupt, then go back to the game, do whatever you need to do. Then lock on, so it's basically, it's locked at 60 hertz right now. I can unlock it, but then you hear your CPU fans crank up as the CPU is just annihilating that poor function just over and over and over again. So yeah, that was one of the challenges I had with just getting it to run. I also added a yes.
Wow.
So whenever you ported the thing over, right? So you were talking about you're using a different graphics library.
Yes. Well, I'm using a framework. Yep.
Okay, so you had to like redraw everything, right? But are you still? It's basically like you're looking for mouse clicks in target areas and then passing that to the backend code that used.
Well, the way that it worked was that the core library, which I think it was called. Hang on a second, I'm going to actually crack open because I think I have my GitHub like actually open right now. No, I don't. I'll grab it real quick. GitHub. Just gonna grab. There was a graphic library that was in the game, and it was called Normal, like the cat from Garfield.
Oh yeah.
So it was a graphic library called Normal, and in this graphic library, it had the keyboard functions, the mouse functions, the graphic routines, and that was the part that was never banked out in the original version. That was the part that was stayed in memory, and the rest of the game was banked in and out. And so what I used a framework called Allegro, and Allegro was originally developed on the Atari ST and was ported to DOS. So a lot of the functions that are kind of needed in a DOS environment were already there. So it was actually sometimes as easy as just finding the normal function and just replacing it with the Allegro function that did exactly the same thing. However, and what's even cooler is that Allegro was originally developed by a guy named Sean Hargraves. And Sean actually went on to become like, I remember using Allegro when I was, learning to code back in the late 90s. And Sean had gone on to actually become like the head developer of XNA and then the team lead for DirectX. And so he went on to Microsoft, and that's what he's doing now. He works in the gaming space in Microsoft right now.
I thought that name sounded familiar.
And so so I used his library, and it was just simply just replacing the normal functions with the Allegro functions, and also getting rid of the DOS. There's certain DOS libraries that are kind of assumed that aren't in POSIX. So I had to make POSIX. I either had to use the POSIX version or write my own POSIX version of a Microsoft function. Like for example, in old DOS games, they would use like conio, conio.c, and that's not POSIX. That's not even used. So I had to make my own Kano functions. I had to make my own, the way that POSIX accesses folders and directories is different than how Microsoft does it even today, right? So I had to replace those functions with something more generic because I wanted to port this code to something. I chose POSIX because it's Linux, but also because it's easiest to port it to other architectures too. Once I get into that kind of a state, then I can, as long as that platform has Allegro libraries, I'll just move it over to that and I'll just recompile it, and it just would work. And I kind of got that going as well. So I can take this code without changing an iota. It compiles in Windows. It compiles under Linux. It theoretically can compile under Mac, but I don't have a Mac, so I never tried it. But I also know they make Allegro libraries for Mac. They make Allegro libraries for Android, and I was beginning to start with that, but I only had a year funding, and I had 2 artists. And what happened is near the end of the year, my funding ran out. I had a bunch of ideas planned, like I wanted to put a tutorial system in the game. I wanted to put in like kind of, have the graphics look way more contemporary than they do now. A lot of the games, the graphics now are placeholders. So that didn't happen. And then I just shipped it and said, okay, it's cool. And I think right now, my original investment was like, I think about $36,000, I think, around there. And then that's payment for me and payment for my artists, right? And I've sold like $200. So if you do the math, my return on investment was not that great. No. And that is sometimes.
So did you have any cost sink into actual software stuff, or was it all just like human time?
It was all human time.
Okay, I figured it was all like open source stuff.
Yeah, I leveraged heavily on open source utilities. Like, for example, one of the things I had to do was I originally had the original MIDI files for the original game, and they were written before MIDI was standardized. So if you tried to play it in a MIDI player now, it sounded like garbage. So I had to go in and resequence the MIDI so that it would work on a normal MIDI player, and then I just recorded that as an audio file, and that's what I'm using as the opening theme song.
Sounds like you signed up for a grand adventure.
I learned so much. Oh my God, yeah. I had to take the font, and I changed the text rendering. The text rendering code was so slow. I actually made it so it was a TrueType font. It would display a TrueType font instead. So I had to take the original font and go into a TrueType font editor and make my own fonts in TrueType using FontForge and Inkscape, because that's the vector editing program. So I would make the fonts in Inkscape and then import them in the FontForge and set them all up and then generate a TTF file, and I had to validate the TTF and all that other kind of stuff. So I became like, I know how to make fonts now. I know how to resequence MIDIs now. I know how to, know the nuances of 1990s coding. I now know, I know K&R function declarations, and now how to convert them. I know how to, change something from overlay linking to static linking or dynamic linking. And these skills are something I wanted to build up so that I could just add it to a resume and say, hey, I've coded this thing from DOS, this old thing that, doesn't run on an emulator, or we don't want to use an emulator, we want to use native code. I could take this old code and now put it into something contemporary, so you guys can now port it to whatever Switch or Android or what have you. And
so GOG didn't want the game, but maybe GOG wants you now.
Maybe, I don't know, because the thing is that after I ran out of cash, I had to get a quote unquote real job again, and so now I work IT for a hospital, and that's kind of where I've been hanging out at doing. I just went back into the workforce and did whatever. And the problem when I did a kind of a post-mortem on what happened with it after I got everything done, the stuff I wasn't able to do, which was really good ideas, like putting in a tutorial system or getting it on Android or getting it onto some platform with a touchscreen. Because one of the first things I did was I actually made the game touchscreen compatible. The original game, if you run it in DOSBox, even if you have a touchscreen, it only uses the mouse delta X and Y, so it only does mouse movements. You can't click on something and have the mouse pointer jump to that location. It doesn't understand that, but now it does.
So here's a thought.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting about what you're saying with the whole, GOG wouldn't take it because it would run poor in an emulator, and yet what you've this is not running it. This is directly a port. This is not an emulator.
Yes.
Right? What's interesting is like I'm kind of wondering if GOG has ever done that with any of their games, or if all of these old licenses that they've acquired, they've all gotten them to work in like a DOS box that runs in the background, right?
Well,
and you just don't know about it. You know what I mean? Because like
I could tell you, because one of the things, I have lots of hats, and also one of the things is, like Maurice, the artist from Rules of Engagement, I'm also low-key, have been on the internet for a really long time too. One of my claims to fame is I actually had a viral I had a viral YouTube video where I did a 1-to-1 scale model of the Enterprise in Minecraft. And the first thing people hear when I say that, they realize, oh, I'm that guy, right?
Was it the Next Gen Enterprise?
Yeah, it was the Next Gen Enterprise. Yep.
I remember that.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yep, that was me.
Wow.
So what happened is when I did that project, I became internet famous, quote unquote. And
so we got like the two pillars
Thomas
of
the Tank Engine and then
exactly.
yeah. Well, here's the thing.
So we've had the guy who did the Thomas the Tank Engine mod for Skyrim on here.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
in fact, he's trained something in the dev room.
Yeah, the
Train whiz
with me. Well, what I did was I wound up getting at this community going, right? And believe it or not, this community still exists to this day. They rebuilt that chip is done, and it's actually complete. And they have a whole Minecraft server that's been running for years. And the problem with it is that I went to that server once and I said a simple hello, and I got mobbed by everybody. And I do not like. Lots of people like, oh my God, they gave me admin rights to the server like immediately. And I was like, I don't know if I should have, because I don't even play Minecraft. Honestly, I don't. And so I was like checking out the ship and I was like, oh, this is a cool wall. And I broke one of the walls and I didn't know how to fix it. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm like an admin here and I'm going to destroy my own ship. You know what I mean? So I don't like social media, and I do not like I don't like Facebook for like privacy reasons, and I don't like Twitter because of parasocial engineering, which is gross. And so I kind of stay away from social media, which is probably a detriment to the game I did too. The most I did was I did a development blog, how 90s of me, right? But I didn't go out there and I didn't tag everybody this was going on. I didn't advertise myself out there because I simply just don't use those platforms. If I had a social media manager, that would have been cool. I had a budget. I wasn't thinking about that at the time. So, that's one of the kind of downfalls to this game is I really didn't advertise myself when I should have. But, at the same time, it was more of a learning experience for me to see if what I wanted to do was even feasible. And given a chance, if I got another 36 grand and said, hey, do you want to do this project again? I'd take it in a heartbeat, because the experience that I learned was more so than just shoving it into a 401k and seeing it like, when I'm 65, even though that probably would have been better in the long run. I learned a lot from that. And, that's kind of where I went with that.
Well, okay. I guess, well, I mean, I guess with like my question though was like, I wonder why, or if they even, if GOG does what you did. Because you would think that like
I'm sorry, and I got distracted by my own story.
It's okay. It's a good story though. I like it.
No. I
was waiting on the Richard Stallman part where he's like, yeah, and I don't like web browsers, so I have it email me web pages.
Yeah. What happened was that I actually is also a part of another community where we reverse engineered Final Fantasy VII, and we've been doing that since 1996, 7. Yeah. So I've been part of this.
Further ahead than the real guys.
Square is.
They hired one of us.
Oh wow!
There was a guy who, because the original Windows of for reasons they lost the source code to Final Fantasy VII, and a guy remade one of the drivers that was OpenGL and made that was DirectX. And he remade one of the graphics drivers into OpenGL and fixed a lot of the bugs, so the executable could run through this driver perfectly fine. And Squaresoft hired him, and now they made their own driver for it. And then there's like an open source version of the driver that we use for mods. So when you buy the Steam version of Final Fantasy VII, you will get the original game, which they lost the source code to, plus this special driver that was developed by this guy that connects the cloud and does the cloud saves, does all the extra extended stuff. But if you go to the forums for Final Fantasy VII modding, you'll find the other driver that we use that has like, you can put in the full grown characters, you can make the screen resolution 4 times as large, so yeah, there's companies out there that do that they don't have the original source code, but they have to port it over, so they'll patch on or glue on something to get it to run. Now I don't know if GOG would be interested in the game again. I don't even have it on Steam because honestly I ran out of funding and I didn't feel like spending $100 on upkeep for a game on Steam that I really didn't want to socially support, you know? So, I mean, there's still life in it. I still have GitHub, and it's if I felt so inclined, if some other programmer wanted to, you know, take a peek at it, I could, you know, open it up for read only. I can't give out the source code because it's not mine, you know. But, you know, if someone wants to like look at it, I could look over their shoulder, making sure nothing's wrong. But that's where I'm kind of sitting at it right now. So, I mean, it's kind of a drag because I'm talking about how great this game is, but it kind of just flamed out in a whimper. But that's the thing of development sometimes, I guess.
Well, I guess it opens up the next question then, which is like, what about the other games from that same developer that kind of tie into this one?
The contingency that I originally licensed the source code from was that I'm going to go ahead and take rules of engagement. I'm going to see what I can do with it, and if I can make it work, then if thing looks attractive to the original owner, then we'll negotiate getting Breach, which was it's actually the next program to link them together. And
Right.
then I think beyond that, because rules of engagement uses something called IGS, where you could actually run. There's another game you get called Breach 2, which is kind of like a what's that game? XCOM. It's an XCOM like game.
Yeah.
So in rules of engagement, you can actually take over ships. You can link up to the ship and take them over. But if you had Breach 2, it would actually link in and then launch Breach 2, and you could actually do an XCOM game to
Which
take over that ship and then go back to rules of engagement. And the idea was they were going to have all different kind of components link into this game. Maybe a cockpit simulator, maybe the Breach for the Marines, and then some other game to kind of take advantage of the gigantic data heap that the universe was generating, you know?
Yeah, and we were talking about that the other night, where it's the issue of how rare is it that a developer makes two different games that actually snap together and create a bigger whole. I can't think of another game that did.
Yeah, that you try the two programs, and that's exactly right. Other than being DLC, you know.
Well, I mentioned last time about Silent Hunter and Destroyer Command.
Oh yeah, that's right. I knew you had one that did it, but I couldn't remember what the heck it was.
Yeah. Silent Hunter. I think it was Silent Hunter 2 and Destroyer Command could be linked together, and like one person could play as destroyers.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly right.
Yeah,
Well,
it's kind of dissimilar stuff. Like, I mean, there's flight sims like the MiG-29 and F-16 from Nova Logic. Those go together.
I could have sworn also like
that's kind of the same.
Wasn't Eve supposed to be that, like with Eve and Dust supposed to be like that?
That was loosely connected, so like the chat systems were connected. So it's almost kind of like I mean, there was some like chat system and economy stuff that were connected, but it's kind of more like Blizzard games are linked together by Blizzard. I mean, you're not really in the same thing.
Well, the thing I know is that with at least with Eve Online is that the clock on that's only updates once a second, which means you can't use that for FPS in any meaningful way. That's why you can't even fly in the cockpit, so to speak, because the updates, the universe doesn't just update that quick, you know.
Well,
not every
there is actually a first person mode for that game.
Yeah, I thought it was like more like camera though. I remember playing it once and it was like, So you don't have you don't get the advantage like I do of being able to update the universe every 53 milliseconds, you know. So, but
what were the biggest challenges you ran into? You've already mentioned a couple of things, like what were the links. But as we were talking in Discord in our private message, you mentioned things like declarations and loops.
Mm-hmm.
Like, were things like those the biggest challenges you ran into?
The one I had, the challenge I had the biggest as far as architecture wise was that loop, was that interrupt that I had to emulate, because the game actually ran without it. It just wouldn't update the universe, right? And so it was the perfect thing to put off. Like, I'll just get more functionality in the game. I'll get more graphic functionality going in. I'll get the graphics looking a little bit better. I'll get the state machine to work a little bit more efficiently.
Because the game's actually not like doing anything.
It's not doing anything, but I could switch states back. I could go to one part or the other and pull that universe, the initial universe data. It just wasn't running. And so it came down to, today, and it's called the 3CH loop, because that's the interrupt that gets called, the interrupt 3CH, or 3C hex. And it was just, I always had it like to do, and it was like this big block in the code, work on the 3CH loop, and I could not. I just kept pushing it off until one day I'm like, I gotta get this thing running. And so, valiant effort, first try, I'm gonna make it a thread, and tried to do spin locks. I tried to do locking, and it just fell apart. And I'm like, all right, fine, put it back, put it away. Let's make the state machine a little bit better, And then finally, I was just exasperated where I'm like, I can't get this thing to run, And that's when the helping hand came out and said, oh yeah, I did this with a paint game a long time ago, or a paint program a long time ago. Just, you have to do this, and this. Just here, and here.
Which community did you lean on to find that information?
I don't remember. It was, like I said, it's a PCX editor. It's open source. It was on
the community,
GitHub.
The community through which you found that. What was the community?
I think I was yelling in the Allegro forums about it. And then someone gave me a link to this program, and I found the program and got in touch and was like, oh yeah, we did that. This is how you do it. And
so I just people that are actively using Allegro today, what are they doing? Are they using it for modern things, or is this everybody that's back hacking retro things?
Honestly, to tell you the truth, it's obscure. It's gone to obscurity because everyone who wants to have like a nice cross-platform graphic library usually uses SDL, which is its complement. SDL gets a nice cross-platform framework, or something like that. But the problem with the reason why I couldn't use SDL is, first, I didn't know it. I've been using Allegro forever, and second of all, Allegro's in C, and I didn't have to worry about C++ bindings or anything like that.
Right. Well, I just mean like the rest of the people. Like if there's 100 other people that are active in the Allegro community, what could they possibly be doing with Allegro?
There's a lot of people use it to learn programming. A lot of it use it to kind of learn frameworks, because it's a great beginner's framework, right? So if you can get used to Allegro, you can move on to SDL and those type of frameworks as well, OpenGL.
So it's like simple but well structured.
It's very well structured, and it's very DOSy. I mean, I really can't reiterate enough how DOSy all the functions are, because it's just the functions, like for page flipping. There's a page flip command. There's a palettes, and when you not in 5 and 4 you had palettes, but being able to play MIDI with it, or playing audio, it's just they're very simple basic functions that you would have found in a Sound Blaster library or in a DOS graphics.h library. I mean, they're very, very, very simple, but it's just a framework. You can do what you want with it, and it just fits Normal, which is the library that kind of was in ROE, like a glove, where I could just a lot of times just swap one function for another, or just put a wrapper around it and have that function call this, which called Allegro, kind of a deal. And then with that one C file updated, everything else just kind of started working, because they all made normal calls, because the rest of the game assumed that normal was always in memory. So as long as I could emulate it with Allegro, or make an Allegro wrapper for it, the game just ran. Yeah. And it was shockingly easy to get it to going, but then me adding all the stuff, like getting the resolution to quadruple, because I mean the mouse only knows 320 by 200. So if you click on a space, I've got to take what the actual resolution is and then divide it down so it equals something in that 320 by 200 space. And did I click on the mouse? And another thing that I also added to the game too, which is the big secret, is it actually has theme. You can theme it. So one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to put this on a touchscreen, and I actually have I've played it on a Surface, and it runs awesome on a Surface, because you're just booping away with your fingers on the screen, right? But the thing is that I can't use LCARs, because in the prevailing years since touchscreens became a thing, Paramount, the people who own Star Trek, are super litigious over someone making an LCARS interface on something, right? If you make an app with an LCARS interface on it, it gets C&D'd almost immediately because
really?
they own, yes. Like they made a
license holder
tricorder.
for Star Trek were being jerks.
I know, right?
God.
So I actually had to remove the LCARS theme from my theme so I could put it up on Itch.io, right? And there's still some copyright iffy stuff in there. Like you can make a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle alien in the game. And but the thing is that I had to get rid of the LCARS thing. But there's a theming system in there. And I actually implemented bitmapped buttons because the buttons are actually just 2 color. You can only make them 2 colors in the original game. So you can, if you're quote unquote enterprising enough, actually make a legit Star Trek simulator with this. You know, if you want to like be Captain copyright infringement, go right ahead. And you know, all the theme system is there. The theme system works in the DOS version. I'm sorry, in the demo version too. So if you just want to play with the theming, download the demo version and play with the themes. There's a little README inside the theme folder, and you can pick that up. I have a video where I teach how the themes work and stuff. But it's like that was the thing where I wanted to make the themes as easy as possible because the graphics are kind of a hot mess express, and I didn't have UI graphic experience I couldn't update it because I don't have the art skills. Why one artist is great for characters and ships. The other artist, Maurice, he kind of became a screenwriter and hasn't really done art, you know, contemporary art in like 20 years.
See, so, Hollywood screwing over space games again.
Yeah, so
come on, Chris.
He gave me ideas. I hate him for his time, you know, but a lot of the ideas looked cool. But then when I kind of set them up, it just, you know, if you take a look at the like what UI would look good for today, like an Iron Man helmet UI kind of deal, the semi-transparent, thin neon kind of deal. I can imagine that. I can imagine someone turning it into a legit Star Trek interface. I can see it turning into, you know, but those are up to themers, and that's something I can't do because I can't obviously put LCARS back in it, but it's still, that's another one of its kind of cool things that's in it, but no one knows about. Like, you know, you didn't know there was the manual's there too. It's hanging out with the executable because we're also going to put it on their desktop. That's clutter, right? And things like that. So I don't know. But are you guys still there?
Yeah.
Still here.
Okay.
So my question then is, now that you have experience in taking a game from the 80s, 90s, and putting a new, basically like a whole new wrapper on top of it,
or getting it to run is the big
thing. That too. But the thing that Hunter and I were talking is like a lot of the stuff that people are doing now. It's either just not a good design, or it's a cool idea, but they're overreaching and trying to, like, you know, hey, I'm going to make this giant open world crafting survival thing that never gets finished, right? But we have so many games that were in the 90s that people like a bigger studio won't touch because they're like, oh, well, that game was already made. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, that game was made, but that game was made in like 1992. And there's like 2 whole generations of people that never saw that thing. So,
or they say, or you know, fans will ask for a remake or a re-release, and you know, the developers will be like, "You think you want that, but you really don't."
Yeah, you guys got phones, right?
And then, no. Go ahead. Well, I was gonna say, and yet somehow though, you know, even though Blizzard couldn't make it work within their own ecosystem, they still licensed Warcraft 1 and 2 and Diablo to be sold on GOG. So it's kind of people, the retro space is so alive, and there's a plethora of just these older games that are still hard to, I mean, with all the work that GOG, and we give them praise because they're doing the Lord's work. You know, when you look at, I mean, really, where else are you going to get a digital re-release of Blade Runner? Come on.
I know.
Well,
it's amazing.
That's the thing. Like, I want to have somebody, and I've reached out to Night Dive a couple of times, and I'm just not getting stuff back. So maybe, I don't know, man. Do you know people over there in the like make retro shit work community? Maybe you can get one of these guys for us. Well, but I want to know, like, they grabbed this old game and then they got to make that shit work. And it's not always as easy as, oh, we just stick it in DOSBox and tweak DOSBox out, and I'm a DOSBox tweaking pro. It's like, no. There's sometimes things must be done, right? And it's like, well, like say it was a 16-bit thing. Windows can't do a 16-bit display anymore. Like you can't switch your desktop to it. Shit'll crash. So how do you get around that? How do you deal with like an installer that you can't install the game because it won't execute? It's like, oh, that's a 16-bit installer, SOL. Just stuff like that. So then the other part that I look at is games that were hot in the 90s, and it's a solid, cool design, right? Like let's pick Star Crusader. Right? Remember that one, Brian?
Of course.
Okay.
Love that game.
Now we happen to know the guy that made Star Crusader, and if he had the source code, could you put a whole new graphics engine front end on that and yet still pass all the parameters back to the original code? So it's kind of like you're putting a new skin on it, right? So it looks modern, but the guts are still that game from 1992 or 94 or whenever it was, because they didn't even have 3D accelerators back then, right? So I think like those kind of games, if they came forward to now and could just get a facelift without having to it's like, oh, XCOM, let's have a new XCOM. Well, they totally redesigned XCOM instead of just making a modern.
Well, take what the X-Wing VM guys are doing.
Yeah, exactly.
They're taking all of the old X-Wing files and throwing it into Unity.
Yeah, but they're using the mission files, but they've had to rewrite like all the logic in that thing. I'm talking about like leave the brain of the game alive, but put a new face on it so that people can stand to look.
That was my idea with mine too. But I mean, also there's also, I mean, when they did interviews with when they were porting XCOM, and they said, guess what? We're not going to have the micromanagement like they used to. We're not going to have you keep track of 32 movement points and all of your bullets all at once. They streamlined the interface, and though they made it a different game, some can say it was for the better because I
But what I'm saying is I can't play Star Crusader right now in 3D accelerated glory, and really I would like to. And and honestly, the guy that wrote that thing, he could sell it again right now if it just looked like a modern game. But you can't give somebody a 320 by 200 non 3D accelerated thing and say, here you go.
So it was the source code lost, or is it owned by the publisher? Or
no, he's it. But I don't know if he specifically has it or not. But I'm pulling him out as an example, right? Because that's a cool ass old game that we'll just never see anything like that again. Like, we had him on the show. You should listen to that one in particular, because it was just like he's telling us shit that game did that we didn't even know that it did, and it's like, my God, it did what?
Oh, yeah, that's the thing about rules of engagement. Like, the one of the things about the way the engine works is that the ships actually deal with relativistic speeds. The ship itself it doesn't simulate all relativity, but your ship goes from like 0 to, depending on the engine, you can go to fractions of light speed, right? And your communications goes 4 times light speed, right? So that way it doesn't take 47 minutes to contact someone halfway across the solar system. But it could take a half an hour, if you're like on one side of the map to the other. So the actual communication packets are timed by the engine. So if you're going like point something odd speed and you fire out a communication, you have, and it's like on the other side of the sun, you may have to wait 15 minutes for that reply to come back. If they're in an asteroid field, you're going to deal with interference. You'll see them fuzz out. If they're damaged, you'll see them actually when the ships get damaged, the captains actually get damage. You'll see like their uniforms are torn, and you'll see blood on their faces, and that kind of stuff that you never really see in the game. So there's a lot of under the hood stuff happening, even with ROE, that's shockingly advanced. I tiptoed around the AI stuff. I didn't want to touch it and thankfully I didn't have to, because that stuff was scary, but it worked. You know what I mean? I had to dive in there because I had a bug where if you fired a missile and saved and went back up again, it would explode. And I had to go in there to figure out why that was. It turns out it was a bug in the original game. That was frustrating. But that's the kind of stuff that you deal with as well, is that they are massively more complicated than what you take it for.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I mean is like, if you get somebody that's like, that can do the art and stuff, but they don't want to redesign all that, like I'll just use the term air quotes, all that, right?
Yeah.
Like everything going on under the hood. They don't want to deal with that, but they could put a new skin on it, right? Like, what about like Diablo 2, right? Like, so Blizzard won't damn do it because they're stubborn. But it's like Diablo 1 got on GOG, and that's cool. But what about, is there some way somebody could put a wrapper on Diablo 2 that'll bump the resolution up?
See, the whole problem with that, though, the whole problem with that, though, is that in my experience, especially with ROE, artists are not cheap. They really aren't, and
but I mean, in this, like, okay, whenever you look at an emulator like MAME, right, then they have the, different filters that you can put on, right? Yeah. So it'll upscale, but it'll also like, blur things or smooth things or, 1,000 different filters you can throw on things.
Yeah.
So is there a way like we could take a game like Diablo 2 and then be able to say, okay, it was 640 by 480. Let's make that 4x res and then throw like a smoothing filter on it so it looks good. And then you throw that back out on the market. Like, hey, here's Diablo 2, like HD'd, not completely redrawn, but you just took what was there.
I would point you towards the original Final Fantasy VI port to mobile and how they tried that and how awful it looked. That was not a kind port to when they.
Yeah, that had like all kind of tiling problems and stuff too, as I remember.
But that's they took the original assets, they tried to upscale and filter and on each individual tile, and it just it was not it was not good, and then that's with my, like I said, my issue too is I have my theming system's free for the taking, man. If you guys want to do it, fine, but you're gonna be kind of hard pressed to find an artist that doesn't want to get paid.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to, you have to find someone who has that zen of, wow, I have a Star Trek engine. And I really don't want to say that because I don't mind making it sound like I'm incentivizing people to do copyright infringement, especially since I ported it, but it's there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but whenever you theme your thing, right? It's like I can change the look of the buttons, but I can't change where the buttons are.
No, you can't change where the buttons are. But that's kind of the charm of the game, though, is because it's very all-cars like, and it does have a flow. It's just you have to learn it.
Just for me, though, like I look at this game and I'm like, wow, what the hell is even going on?
A lot is going
honestly,
on.
I think
DCS for starships,
Yeah. Well, I think from a marketing point of view, the absolute best thing you could do, because you're probably the most pro player of this game at this point, would be do some Let's Play videos. Just be like, hey man, this is this game. This is how you play it. Because if I looked at it and had never seen it before, even when I look at it now, honestly, it scares the shit out of me. And I'm just like, I ain't got time for that.
Oh yeah, it's one of the things. When I was doing research, and people were telling me it's like, this game requires a 220-page manual, and that's no joke, right? And they're like, oh man, I remember manuals. They were the bomb back in the day. And I'm like, yeah, well, this one's got 220 pages. That's awesome. And then I had them play, and they're like, wow, this game's hard. I'm like, well, I have the manual. It's the PDF.
It needed that manual. It needed that manual.
But there's like flavor stories in there and stuff too to kind of keep it live and stuff. So it was kind of neat. But yeah, you have to, let's turn to the section on tactical and figure out how on earth I'm supposed to, reload my missiles at a star base. What's the protocol for doing that?
Even beyond that, right? Like, okay, you just launched this game for the first time. What the hell is this? Right?
Oh yeah, you don't even know how to start the game.
Yeah, because that is super weird, right? You have to make a commander, and then you make a campaign, and then you take a mission and link it to the commander, and then it still doesn't start. So then you have to go back to the commander select and then look at like existing missions because now you've made one.
Yes.
And then launch it. And I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah,
And
I never understood why they did it that kind of flow. Like, did you want multiple commanders doing multiple games at the same time?
The idea is, architecturally speaking, the idea is the system is modular. And you can actually trade missions, commanders. I'm sorry, you can't trade well, you can, but the captain file, the mission files, the ship files, and the solar system files, and the enemy files can all be standalone. So if you make a really cool enemy, you can send that enemy to your friend, and then they can use that enemy in their campaigns. If they make a really cool solar system, they can take that solar system and give it to their friend, and they can play that in that game. If they make a mission, the missions wrap in the solar systems and the enemies in that one mission, and that makes that mission file standalone. You can give those to your friend, and they can play those. So,
well, oh my God.
I mean, if you just did a video that was like, okay, we're gonna make a commander, link him to a mission, start the shakedown cruise, right?
Yep. And
we're just gonna fly the shakedown cruise, and here's what the buttons do and stuff, and it would probably, I don't know, a half hour
that would have been part of the tutorial system that unfortunately I had to cut for time. There is a tutorial. There is actually a video player in the game that does tutorials, and you actually have a tutorial selection screen. It was time versus money. I ran out of time. I didn't have a chance to, doing tutorials is like part of the
leverage YouTube at this point, because you have to get word out there that this thing exists. Right?
I know.
And probably the best way to do that is to make a video of like, hey, I put all this work into this and restoring this classic game. Let me show it to you. Right.
I did.
Don't show them the crazy. Don't show them like the crazy shit. But just like, here's the basics. If you buy this game, here's how to get your feet wet.
Yep.
$5. Here's where to buy it.
Yep. Now, what I've done is I've actually, on my enterprise channel, the one that actually has the viral video, I did post one of those. I did post hey, I made a game, and here it is, and here's how it works, and such like that. And I do have a tutorial that I made. It's not on my main channel, though. It was just more for me showing off, when I would post it somewhere, like, here's a game, I made it, here's the demo, and by the way, here's a little video so you can kind of see how the demo plays. And like, by the time, after a year of development, honestly, to tell you the truth, I was like, I'm out of cash. I need a job. And it's like I said, it's really sad that that's how that kind of wound up. And right now, I am now knee deep in Windows 10 system upgrades because Windows 7 died today.
Oh, God, right.
So now I know we have 2,000 systems that I still have to upgrade at the hospital that I work at.
Oh,
and,
God.
I really don't have time.
If it makes you feel better, I still have Windows 2003 servers.
What?
Yes. We're desperately trying to decommission them, but yeah.
Well, you know what? I do a game of the week every week, and I didn't have a game set for next week. So now I do. I'm going to do rules of engagement using your port. There you go.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things too. And you were talking about interfaces earlier. One of the things about the port as well is that there's a lot of paradigms that have modernized since that game came out. Like pinch to zoom. It's like the easiest thing in the world, right? And I don't know if anybody remembers the original Microsoft Surface demonstration when it was actually a surface, when it was like on a table. Right?
Yeah.
And they were showing pinch and zoom as being, that's why it's called the Surface, because it originally was on a big table.
Yeah, and I looked at that thing and I was like, that's going to be used for playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep.
And that's, or maybe at the Pentagon. But
they were showing how they did the zooms with pinch and squeeze, and everyone's like, that's kind of ingenious. And now it's like ubiquitous. Rules of engagement doesn't do that. Their zoom is different. It uses left click and right click. And, it's something where when I was looking at it, it requires 2 fingers. I don't have multiple touch input on the system, so it didn't get in. But, that's kind of another caveat I was just thinking about,
So now that it's like you are very aware of the guts of what this thing's doing, right? And you could kind of tear it apart and see like how the logic works.
Yes.
So my thought in this is for like project number 2 is instead of doing a version that just like emulates this thing, ports it, whatever, if you rebuilt this as like a game that was actually, I don't know, I don't want to use the term MMO-ish, right? No, but if it was a web server that you could connect to, and then there's other players out there, and it's like, hey man, we're the Federations, those guys are the Klingons, and it updates like one tick a second kind of thing. And
that's one of the things I kind of fantasized about from time to time was, since I have the engine, just ditch the entire like presentation layer altogether and do like 3D like homeworld kind of kind of view where you would have the space in 3D space, even though it's a 2D plane.
Right. But that's what I was asking earlier, though, is like, can you just rip the presentation layer and replace it with something else, but leave the brain of the game intact?
The
is
problem
that a thing that you could do with?
I'd have to practically rewrite the game because, like I said, the game itself is so strangely architectured with the fact that it doesn't have a main loop, right? Yeah. It's a state machine. And so the system is dependent upon the state switching going from screen to screen. So I could run the universe simulator, right? Which it runs, but pulling that information is the way it's architectured is it pulls information by changing its state. And that's just how it's built. And not without ripping out the whole part. I mean, it's kind of modular, but keep in mind it's also C, so it's not like I have objects that I can just redefine or inherit. There's no inheritance in this whatsoever. There's no object oriented paradigms at all in it, which made it great for me.
It might as well be programmed in BASIC at this point, right?
It's
close. It's closer to the metal, right?
Yes,
but it's still it's like it's compiled. It's not interpreted in real time. But other than that, it's a very linear thing. So,
yep, it's very well. I wouldn't even say linear. It's a very deck of cards kind of thing, right? It's like oh my goodness, like HyperCard back in the day. You can easily see it. I don't know if you guys ever used that before or not, but the like for example, Myst was written in HyperCard. That's where you change the state of it's a big state machine. You go to this, puts up a new state, switch to switch, changes the state, plays the video, changes the state. That's kind of how it was. That's how they did it back in the day. They didn't have time to re-render.
Millions of copies, and it was renowned worldwide for years. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So I had to step away for a minute. I'm not sure what you guys are talking about. I'm sorry. My cat was about to attack my desk. I apologize.
You're fired, Brian.
So what are you guys talking about?
Oh, just deficiencies.
Pipe dreaming.
Yeah.
So like, if there was have you ever played Federation Commander or Starfleet Battles or any of that? Like,
no, I played. Stuff? No, the last space game I actually played, well, besides this one, was back in the Wing Commander.
What?
I did Elite back in the day. So those are
okay because like Starfleet Battles is basically a tabletop war game that is this. Right.
Okay.
So, it's like, okay, where's my energy distribution? How am I gonna like balance out my shields? Do I want to turn my weak shields away from the enemy?
Yep.
My weapons take X amount of power to charge and how many seconds, and so I need to time my maneuvering such that I'm not exposing my weak shields, but I want to have the weapons on target at the time that they're ready to fire at the optimal range. Things like that, right?
Yeah, that's actually all in ROE, and you can also like balance your crews. So say like your damage, you can allocate certain crews to engineering and certain crews to the navigation, or certain crews to, so you can actually do crew management too on the fly while you're playing. So yeah, that's all. But
so my thought is, if there was a web server based game, right, where you log into it and there's like a fee monthly, $5 a month to subscribe to Starfleet, definitely not Star Trek Online, right? like avoidalllawyers.com. But you know, it is a space captain game where you have a ship, you know, and say that the game, the pace of it actually updates 1 tick a minute. Right. So you got time to sit there and think like, okay, where am I going to shift my energy allocation? How, you know, what maneuver am I going to put in? So then you have, you know, like if you tell your helm, you know, like hard to starboard, then for the next minute, you're going to do that maneuver. So this is where you're going to end up at the end of a minute. And then when the thing ticks, all players update. So everybody's orders that they've got keyed in go into effect. That resolves for that minute, and then, you know, start the next minute.
It sounds like that'd be more indicative of a kind of like a what's that, Civilization turn-based deal where it's like everyone put in their turn, click next turn, and then wait for everyone to put in their own deal.
Right.
I mean,
but the thing is, if it ticks once a minute, then you don't have to, there is no, I'm waiting on everybody to hit next turn. It's like the next turn is going to happen at the top of the, you know, when the second hand hits 12, we're next turn. Right. Because that's kind of like if you play Warcraft, like, you know, World of Warcraft, it also updates in ticks for all players, right? It's like, I forget like how often, you know, like every 2 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever. So that combat, even though it looks fluid on the screen, is turn-based. It's just very rapidly iterative turn-based. But I'm thinking like a Starship game that ticked like once a minute. It gives you some time to think about stuff, right? You can allocate crew, you can do whatever, because there's a lot, like looking at rules of engagement, there's a lot of stuff you got to think about, right? So it's kind of like this gives you a minute to like adjust all your dinguses.
Oh yeah, when you're in the heat of battle with ROE, I mean, because, you know, it updates a whole lot faster. You know, you got like three ships coming down at you, and you've got to jump on tactical, and you know, it'd be kind of cool. Maybe even I can even say there's actually already a game that does this, but you know, where you can give like one screen to one person, and then you be the captain or whatever. But there's already a bridge simulator. That's
there's several,
which is a real shame because Spaz, the guy who's not here tonight, worked on one of those. That's a real bloody shame.
It's like Agnerox or something like that.
He did Quintet. Then
that's
there
one of
was
them.
the Thomas who did the
Artemis.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
There's a couple. There's a couple others that. There's Pulsar. There's Pulsar, sort of.
Yeah,
kind of.
I can't remember. Damn it, the guy from Virginia.
There's one more. Yeah, there's one more I can't remember the name of. But
not to distract the conversation further, but I just had
me.
I just had an awesome thought of, you know how, okay, people who play flight sims, right? Oh my God, it sounds like such a weed idea. People have like flight sims, right? And there's people who build like whole cockpits in their like basements where they can play flight sims.
Oh yeah, sure.
Wouldn't it be interesting to like someone builds, I don't know, a shuttlecraft in their basement, and they have the simulator where they can sit down, or have a bridge in their living room or something like that, where they can.
Some people have done that. Some people. Sorry, good.
Yeah, I've seen an actual, like, it's a Starship bridge that, you know, is made out of like plywood or whatever, and they take it in a van to the convention and set it up. And then each of the stations is there, and they've got like a projection TV on the wall that's like the bridge screen, and then everybody's got their own console, which is probably like a tablet that's embedded into, you know, whatever console they got. So yeah. Oh, they're totally doing it.
Cool. Yeah, that was just toss it out there, but that's, I mean, like I said, the lifespan of this particular, I mean, like I said, I've already done a postmortem on it. I don't want to say it's out of sight, out of mind, because, you know, obviously I'm talking about it here, but it's just.
I'm just looking at, like, you're so well versed in the mechanics of what's going on under the hood. You should leverage that into something.
Yeah,
and I want you to make what I want, though.
My question.
So get bit.
Yeah, my question was.
If you had another 30 grand, I could see what I could do for you.
Well,
my question was,
might be able to achieve something.
Well, my question was, now that you have a regular job and an income, might you think about putting this on Steam? Is that a thought?
No, I don't like the condition it's in right now. I honestly don't.
Mm.
I don't know if it's just me being the artist or what have you.
The condition of Steam, I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's $100 to get lost in the shuffle.
That's fair.
Their indie area is not that great, and Itch.io is going to just be a place where I could put I was gonna make it better and raise the price, but Itch.io was just it's nice. It's not.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Do you call it Itch.io?
Itch.io, isn't it? Is that how you say it?
I have no idea. I call it itch.io.
That's the first pronunciation I've heard of it like that.
We don't really say it out loud.
It caught me.
We don't really say it out loud.
It probably is something filthy in Japan.
We probably don't. We don't really say it out loud.
Because it was, I threw it out there because it was free and it gave me everything that I needed and it was cheap, right?
I personally think it's a great place for it. I think itch.io.
Itch.io is wonderful. Yeah, we love itch.io, whatever you call it.
I'm gonna call it Itch.io from now on.
Itch.io. I just looked up how do you pronounce it, and someone did a poll. Someone did a poll on Twitter. And
probably the people that made it don't even know how to pronounce
and Itch.io, ITHITCH-EE-O won the poll. So so there you go. Itch.io. It does sound like a Pokemon or something. I choose you, Itch.io.
It does.
It really does.
Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna ping some of the people that I don't know a lot of people in Game Press anymore, but this is an article that needs to maybe happen, right? Is like a written interview with
this is a journey, man. I mean, I'm glad we
Gamer Tech Raptor something like that.
I mean, I'm glad we were able to.
Dude, you know where it needs to be? It needs to be on Gamma Sutra. That's where it needs to be. Because
you can
developer talking to developers,
and you can write your own stuff there, right?
Adventure.
You can, that's good. That's a very good suggestion. That's a very good suggestion.
When I was developing the program too, I was by the guy who Thomas, like I said, Tom, the guy who actually owns the source code, the guy who's the president of Omnitrend. He sent me the GDC.
You mean the guy that you're going to get on the show for us?
I've had him on we had him on the show like years ago. Him and Maurice. We had them both on the show.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
You couldn't make it. It was a weird time issue, and I had to take the day off. For some reason,
it's time to tell the world about this.
You know what? Why the hell not? Man. I'll re-invite them back on. Maybe we can get the three of you together. Why not?
You know what'll happen? Tom will be like, so why haven't you been answering my emails? I'm like,
oh no,
I've been busy fixing
the intervention podcast.
He hasn't been answering mine either. People I've had about half a dozen people ask me, do you know if they have that Rules of Engagement 2 dev kit? I'm like, I'll ask, and nothing. So I don't know.
It's just what happened was after what happened was we at the end of everything when I got employed, I actually talked with Tom and I said, because the whole idea with it to start off with was it was no obligation to him. He loses nothing, right? And that's kind of how I wanted to have it, where it was no danger to him. I get the source code. I get to have my playground. So at the end, we did do a postmortem, and I'm like, this is what happened. I'm done. I'm out of cash. It's on Itch.io. This is what the numbers look like. I sent it off to him, and then I was like, all right. And then that's the last I heard of it. I still have the GitHub for it.
Can I go to the Git and actually clone it and look at the source myself?
It's private right now. I can probably invite you, but I would ask not you to release it to anywhere.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is can you make it public domain?
No, I can't. It's not my code. I licensed it from Tom, so you'll have to ask Tom if that's viable or not. And like I said, I did my part of it. We did a postmortem, and I kind of just have it hanging out in my collection, I guess is the best way I can put it.
It's probably a great resume builder. If nothing else.
Yeah, and like I said, if it was for me being knee deep in IT stuff, because the thing was when I ran out of cash, it was getting pretty tight too. I mean, like I said, I live in Southeast Wisconsin, and there's not really a lot up here. So I was it was kind of a point where I was like, oh, I gotta get some players, and I actually work 3 cities away or 2 cities away. And so it was just kind of those things where I kind of needed to spare the moment to get things going. So I'm a contractor now, so that's not forever. So I could probably be out in the market again. So I don't know. It's up to me. I don't know. It gives me a lot to chew on. Let's put it that way.
Well, we're not as big as, say, Gamma Sutra or anything, but hopefully a little exposure will get some sales from this outlet at least.
That'd be
But
nice.
yeah,
You need a GDC talk. That'll.
Yeah, do you know how expensive those are? Those are, oh my God.
I can only imagine. Just going to GDC is expensive.
You.
No, they're a couple grand.
Oh, you have to pay to talk to there?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
that's okay. TED Talk then.
It's a TEDx.
Yeah.
This has been my TEDx.
Yeah, but when I went there, I got to meet. It was amazing when I went to. It was I don't know if you guys ever been to GDC.
No, I wish.
Oh yeah. So I go there, and it's like it's one of the it's a weird thing because you meet up with developers who are like, you try not to fanboy around sometimes when you see them because it was funny because I was sitting at a table once, and this is how ignorant I was. I don't know if I was just sleepy or what, but I'm sitting around the table and I'm looking at everybody's badge, and I see this one guy. His name is blah 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 blah, Frontier Software, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I know this company. He's like, yes. And I'm like, wait, I know this. There's the game you made, and I'm thinking about this game, and I'm thinking of Elite 2 from the Amiga, right? And so all I see is I just see the Frontier logo rolling over, but I don't remember the name of the game. So I'm like, wait, I know this. You gave this game on the Amiga. It has Frontiers in 3D. It was all in 3D. Da 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 da. He's like, yep, that's the theme song. And you made what? What is that game? And it's like, dude, Elite Dangerous just came out, and here I am fumbling over the game they made in the 90s, right? And so it just amused him to no end.
You know what? The game you were fumbling about's the better game. Let's just be honest. It's the better game.
Yeah, Frontier First Contact. Got it. Yeah.
Let's not talk
it's
about
what about the thing? What about the thing we're making now? Yeah.
I had no idea. I know. I if they would have said Elite, I would have been like, oh, and that's how it went down. Is all of a sudden he's like, wait, you guys made Elite? Yes. Like the new one that came out, yeah, that's us too. Oh my God!
Hey, they just got a postage stamp over in the UK.
Cool.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, so that's. But I went there and hung out with there's some talks. I had the $400 ticket, so I couldn't go to all the big talks. But I did a few about game marketing and all the inside business stuff. So if you ever have a chance to go, I would recommend it. It's just
I want to go.
The tickets are a bit pricey.
I can this year because I don't have an actual job, so there's no reason. I really can't.
Well, I wish that they had
up in Frisco, right?
Kind of the deal,
yeah,
right.
San Francisco. Yeah, it's just the tickets are $400. That's kind of the bummer of it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that ain't cheap.
But it isn't. But you get in and it's you make contacts and But if you ever get a chance to go to GDC though, one of the things I have to recommend: make business cards. Have to go with business cards. If you go with no business cards, it's a waste of time because you have to get your name out there and you swap her out and meet all the people and get your name out there. That's what I was trying to do at the time. And I met up with an artist. He helped with the game a little bit, but like I said, in the end, it was an experience, and now it sits and waits, and hopefully may flower one day. But I guess it's up to me.
Well, if you want to go to the summits, it's $949 if you want to go to the summits. If you just want the expo, if you just want the expo itself, $200.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the expo. Better have a happy ending.
But that for GDC, if it's $200, but you don't get any of the talks, though, I don't think.
Yeah. The if you want to get into sponsored content, which I'm not entirely sure what that is, if you want to get into sponsored content, that's $325.
Yeah, that's about right. That sponsored content is when the companies like the company that makes Unity, Unreal. Wait, no, that's where the companies Microsoft will have sponsored content. Well, Microsoft will make a special talk about Azure, and you will go to that talk, and Microsoft will talk about that product for you. One of the things, actually, one of my favorite GDC stories is Microsoft had a booth there, and one of the things about Visual Studio 2015 is what I was using at the time. Is that this is like Developer Inside Baseball? Is Visual Studio 2015 could not do Unicode, right? If you tried to put a Unicode character into your code, we have something called string literals. So if you did like, quote, and then like a Japanese character and an end quote, Microsoft Visual Studio will say, this is the wrong code page. Please save it as UTF-8 or something like that. Now, code pages are something from DOS. Like, that's not even POSIX. That's a DOS thing that Microsoft never, ever dropped. And I'm like, this is stupid because people make applications with emoji in them now. And you can't put a string literal with an emoji in it and you're doing mobile development. That's bad, right? And so I actually went to the developers. I went down to their I went to their booth and I said, hey guys, do you know that you can't save like UTF-8 string literals in a code because it complains it's in the wrong code base because you default to like Latin 1? And they're like, what are you talking about? And they pulled up a copy of it and I typed in, printf string heart, like a little emoji heart string, and then, pressed enter, and it was like immediately like, hi, you need to change this to UTF-8. And I'm like, do you know how annoying that is that I have to make all my code? And then when I load it in UTF-8, it complains that it's not a text file. And they actually pulled over the team lead for Visual Studio to look at it. And it turns out she took one look at it. It's like, oh yeah, we fixed that in 2017 in 2017. So don't worry about it anymore. But it was still like a thing I got to complain to him about. Anyway, I don't know. It's just,
you can register as press as GTC. Maybe I'll do that. I'm gonna try it at least. They don't let me in, I'll think about it. But that's a good idea because I'm trying to do this side business where I help game developers market their games better.
It sounds like you need a customer.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you only got $29,800 to help him recruit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should probably start wrapping up. Folks,
I was looking forward to what games are you playing, because
we can talk about that if you want. We don't always do that, but we can. What are you playing? What are you playing right now?
See, now here's the thing. I play I grew up in Japan. Mm-hmm. So I have the ability to read Japanese. And I played some super, super obscure, fun Japanese games that just are really off the wall. And some of them that are like so awesome, I really kind of kick myself for not thinking of it first. There's two. There's one called, it's a Korean game. I played the Japanese version of it because it came out on PlayStation 1 back in the day. Mm-hmm. And it's called Tomac Save My Earth. It is a game. It is a dating sim where you date a head in a flower pot. And, you basically buy her hats and jewelry and put her on a shelf and water her, I guess. And, it's kind of like a cross between a dating sim and a Tamagotchi where you play with traits to make her as happy as possible.
How long ago was this put out?
Oh, this game came out in the late 90s, I guess.
Okay, because I was curious, when did the dating sim boom start? And that sounds like early on.
Well, this is also Japanese. This is a Japanese game. Japanese dating sims are still a thing. You can still get Tokimeki.
Well, no, I know. I'm well versed in Hateful Boyfriend and Tentacle Dating Simulator and.
Well, this is wholesome. This one is where if you the idea is the premise of the game.
You put a wholesome in that
because it's just a head in a flower pot.
Yeah, but I mean, just I didn't realize that the dating sim genre predated.
Mom, Dad, it's a daisy.
I thought that it was not a super recent thing, but 15 years ago.
No, I was playing I played Tokimeki Memorial on my PC and my TurboGrafx 16 when I lived in Japan. So
well, damn. What hang out after the show. I want to talk to you about Japan.
Okay, cool.
I have questions,
And the other game that I've played besides Tomac Save Earth, which I kind of picked up out of nowhere just because it's fun, is this is obscure, but it's done by a very famous company. It is called Another Mind, and it is a text adventure live action FMV game from Squaresoft. So I don't know if that wraps.
I'm trying to put those things together into
same here.
vision.
So
how do you have FMV text adventure?
Because it comes with a parser that's phenomenal. It comes with a text. The premise of the game is that you wake up as a voice in this girl's head. No reason, just immediate rest. You're in this girl's head, and she comes and says, "Hi, who are you?" And it's dark, and you have this little girl, a live action girl, animate like video in the corner, and she's like, "Hi, who are you?" And you give your name. What do? You do your
this
job.
came out in '98.
Yes, and what you do is it's a mystery where you're trying to figure out why you're in this girl's head and how to get out of it, and it's really awesome because in the first part of the game, she like ignores you. Like there's like this voice in your head. I'm not listening to you. I'm not talking to you. I just leave me alone. You're like, hey, what's because after that whole scene, she wakes up in the hospital.
Is this like where they got the idea for like being John Malkovich?
I don't know, but
I put it in the green room.
Yeah, you wake up. She's in the hospital, and then at night you're like, hi, how's it going? And she's like, oh my god. She freaks out and runs away, and then like on day 3, she's finally she finally accepts you, and then you're like going to school, and she's like, hey, what's the answer to number 4 on the test? You're like, metacardia is the powerhouse of the cell. Thanks. What's the answer to number 4? I'm not doing this anymore. It's just that kind of dialogue back and forth, and you have full-blown sentences that you communicate to her, and she communicates back to you, and it's weird. And the problem is it's entirely in Japanese, so you can't. It's largely lost an American audience, but the fact it's made by Squaresoft and they got like famous actors in it, and just it was really kind of it was a fun game. It took me a while to find it too, but that's the other. And those are the type of games I play: obscure, weird, like
See, I thought Seaman was the weirdest game. No.
Yeah, so if you ever get a chance, we can maybe see someone do a playthrough of Another Mind on like, I don't know, Nico Nico or something, which is like Japanese YouTube.
So you're currently playing these games? Is this like what you're currently
on it? Yeah, it's on and off. It's I just do it to kind of decompress or to practice my Japanese.
I was going to say that's your next viral video is you do a playthrough of Another Mind and translate. So you just narrate while while they're talking, right? Because it's very text heavy.
It is. Now I kind of wish I could translate it, but it's. I've done some, because I did the reversing of Final Fantasy VII, and so I did some initial treks into the data files, but it's just the fact that it's a branching, multiple ending, adventure game. There's too much scripting in it. Is what the problem is. It's very scripted. Or if input equals this, then this, this thing. So
if you could get in and just like swap kanji out for English,
the actual English, yeah. But it's all embedded in the scripting. It's wicked. But
so it's not like they just have like a big page of language that you can just swap out.
No, it's all hard coded in there because who else was going to play the game besides Japanese, right?
Right.
It was definitely not designed for a foreign market, which is it's a neat story. Because you have to figure out who you are, and when the attempts to try and get you out, and there's a time where she's there's like a scene where she goes to a psychic. She wants to prove to somebody that there's a voice in her head, and then the psychic's like doing all this woo woo crap that's not really doing anything. She's like, "This is not working, is it?" And you're like, "Nope, not at all." And she's like, "This is completely wasting my time." It's like, "Yep, it is." And then she does some one thing, and next thing you know, she shows up on your icon, and you click on her, and you're like, "Hi!" And she's like, "Oh my god! It just freaks out because there's this voice in her head now, and it's it just plays to all these stupid story tropes, and it's just amusing as heck. It's you're in a 16-girl. The girl's like 16 years old, so of course you have like the scene where she goes to the bathhouse, and you're like, oh, I'm coming to the bathhouse. It's like, yeah, and and she puts the towel around her head so you can't see anything, and you're like, well, that's not fun at all,
God, that's funny. Now it makes me want to play it.
I was going to say, sounds Japanese.
It's like I said, it's interesting. So, anyways, those are the games I'm playing.
Jim, what about you? What are you playing?
That sounds. I'm back on my Monster Hunter.
Oh, because they just had that.
Yeah, Iceborne just came out, but I'm not ready for Iceborne yet because it's been about 6 months since I played.
Tell them what you did.
What
do you mean?
What did you figure out about Monster Hunter? Like, tell them.
Oh,
what you did
so I went through
spreadsheet that you made.
Yeah, there's some spreadsheets that were made. Basically, so the game, it's a Capcom game, right? Capcom also made Street Fighter. Okay, so imagine Monster Hunter is actually Street Fighter. Okay, so it's like, well, how do you do a dragon uppercut? How do you do a Hadouken? These things. So the same kind of mechanic goes on, but it's also a timing thing, kind of like a Dark Soulsy game. So it's like I have to use like the combo stuff. It's like hit Y, B and Y right trigger to do a move, right? But I also have to time that move, and I have to be aware of what the monster's doing because the monster has a pattern that it does. But the pattern isn't really simple because it's contextual. Like if I interrupt him or if I'm positioned different, he'll do something different. So it's not always like, oh, I know after he roars, he always jumps to the left. Unless you're standing on the right side, and then he might do the other thing. But what if you observe the monster enough, and that's why it's a hunting game, right? Because you actually have to pay attention to these things and how they act. You get to know them, and then you're like, okay, well, if he gives his tell that he's about to do a tail slash, I need to not be where that tail's going to come. And because I've played the game a lot, I know the range of the tail, and I know like here's the deadly zone that I should not be in, right? And then if he's going to do this tail thing, I have the option to not be there. But I also know that, well, I've got the long sword, and if I do a spirit jab followed by a spirit slash, he'll do a back step, and then when he steps forward and does the slash, I'm invulnerable. So if his tail passes through me at the same time that I do that slash, I'm not going to get hit by it, and he's going to take a massive shot. Stuff like that, right? But in order to even begin down the journey of that stuff, you have to know what the hell the moves are. And there's 14 weapons in the game. Even though you're the same character all the time, when you pick a different weapon up, it's like changing from I'm Ryu or I'm Blanca or I'm Chun-Li, right? It's that radical of a change in how the game plays because all the buttons do new stuff, right? All the combos are different. So every weapon is like a character. So it's like, well, I've decided, okay, I'm going to learn how to be really, really good with the longsword because I know a couple of those moves and I know how to get that invulnerability couple of frames in there that I can get away with stuff, and it sheathes pretty quick because you have to put the sword away a lot because you can't like dodge and stuff, and you can't like eat your health potions and things like that if you have your sword out. So it's best like if you're not swinging, put the damn sword away, and then you have all your other options, right? But it takes a while to learn that stuff. So I sat down with Excel last night. And I sat here for a few hours, like going through all of the moves for all 14 weapons. And I made like a big ass spreadsheet. It's like, okay, I have the longsword and it's like B is this attack. Y is that attack. B and Y is this attack. Right. And it's like the game tells you some of it, but some of it you have to kind of figure out by button mashing and seeing what happens. So it's that kind of thing. And then it's also like, oh, if I do Y, B and Y, he'll do this move. And then if I follow that up with like stick down and hit A, I get a combo out of that. Oh, okay. Well, I've discovered that. Let's put that in the spreadsheet, right? So now I've got like this giant ass spreadsheet of Monster Hunter stuff, but it's not the new moves that are in the Iceborne expansion necessarily, because they added a whole slew of new crap in that. So I'm about halfway there now. But now I can sit there and I have this open on my other monitor, and it's my cheat sheet. Right? Like when I'm fighting a monster, I can glance over there and be like, oh yeah, that's that combo. Let me see if I can make that work. So yeah, it's been but the game, it's been very humbling because I was kind of good at it. I wasn't super good at it, but I was like, I beat the game, but I didn't feel good at the end of it. Like I've mastered this game. I was just more like, wow, I actually managed to get lucky and beat this thing. Because if you fight a monster enough times, you'll eventually beat it, but that doesn't mean you can go back and beat it again. It will. So I've started back at the beginning of the game, and I'm just fighting the early monsters with the early weapons and trying to like get my head around this whole combo system thing that I kind of missed before. Because it's like I'm okay with some of it, but I watch YouTube videos of people fighting stuff, and they'll kill a monster in like 30 seconds. It takes me 15 minutes. And it's just like, okay, I have no idea how that guy did all those things that he just did. And the precision of his placement, he's in the right place at the right time and at the right distance from the monster. And his timing was right. And he just got this crazy combo. And, and I'm watching these people like they fight the monster on their terms. They're not like just trying to survive it. Right. So I want to be that guy, if only with one weapon. Right. Because if you get good with one weapon, it'll carry you through the game. So I'm trying to get there. So yeah, there was a lot of spreadsheet that went on last night. So
my cousin did the spreadsheet thing with Disgaea once.
Oh God!
Oh wow!
Oh my God! That must have been the biggest spreadsheet.
This guy is a freaky game, man.
It's such a freaky game. I've only played it on the DS, but oh my God!
Dude, the best part of Disgaea is the game actively requires you to cheat. What? It's like you can make a move and do damage, and then you cancel that and like rewind your move,
what?
And then move again. Yeah. It totally does that, man. You can cheese the shit out of that game, and in fact, it rewards you.
What?
It's completely exploiting the undo system, and yeah, I'm no pro at it, but I played it enough to just be like, oh yeah, I can undo a move, but the guy retains the damage that I did. What? And then I can move again and hit a different guy. I was like, what? And I'm like, this game's broke. And it's like, oh no, actually you're an evil demon and we cheat. That's how we do it.
Oh, gee. Well, Hunter, what are you playing?
Oh, what am I not playing?
Well, you beat Star Wars. That was kind of
I beat all of Star Wars.
Every game, especially Super Bombad Racing.
Super Bombad Racing. Well, no. So not last Sunday, 2 Sundays ago, I, as you guys, some of you might know, on Sundays I do a Star Wars stream on my Twitch page, where I do nothing but Star Wars stuff, Star Wars content, just for fun chat and play games. I'm an old school Star Wars fan, so while the new movies are flashy and entertaining, I like the old stuff more. So I finished up KOTOR 1 2 Sundays ago, and then this past Sunday I started up KOTOR 2, and I'm doing I'm gonna play through the whole thing, and I've never played through KOTOR 2 before, so I've only played through like maybe the first like hour or so of the game, and I'm already past where I've ever like remembered playing in this game. So it's a new fresh experience, so I'm having a lot of fun with that. That's what else am I playing? Oh, we did a play test of In the Black. Jim and I did In the Black this last Saturday, which is the Starfighter Inc. game.
Wow,
Jack
right?
Matthias and those
How
guys,
is it?
They did a. It's interesting. Like if I'm gonna be brutally honest, as much fun as I had, and I was kind of surprised to see where it was at after all of these years. I felt like there should have been more going on.
Yeah, it's like
But
we can see the potential, but it's going to be a while before that thing's like ready. But it's
yeah.
they have a foundation.
I mean, they definitely have some stuff going on there, and I appreciate the flight mechanic of it. I know that they're adding in different play styles, so I mean they're gonna have different varieties of multiplayer. But my concern, and Jim and I were talking about this briefly earlier on the show, my concern for it is lack of content. It's kind of like Infinity Battlescape came out, and Infinity Battlescape is beautiful. Great control mechanics, lots of like potential there, but the entirety of the game is just one giant battle arena for control of dominance of a solar system. And while that can be fun, it just like that can last hours.
Right, and there's no advancement to it. There's advancement in the mission, but if you come back tomorrow, you start at 0 again. So it's like well, what am I grinding?
Personal reward. Yeah, exactly that. So it's kind of like the Elite Dangerous effect, where it's just like there's stuff to do, but on what level of stuff are we talking about here? Like, I can fly around and I can explore and I can mine and I can shoot NPCs and I can shoot other players. Okay. So I think In the Black definitely is in the right direction, and I definitely think that there's potential there, but I definitely am a little surprised to see where it is, considering how long it's been in development. I feel like there should be a little bit more going on.
Well, they kind of fell into the black for a while, and like,
well, and I had the thought about that, right? Because I don't think they're doing this full time.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Because Westman, like he teaches, and I think Jack does some other stuff too. So I mean, I'm pretty sure they're not doing this full time. So I can understand why maybe it's taking longer. But again, Starfighter Inc., we heard about that several years ago. So at this point, but good for them. But yeah, I think that's roughly about. I'm still dipping into Star Trek Online from time to time. It's weird because real life has kind of hit me hard in the sense that like my day job is considerably draining right now, with just everything that's kind of going on. So
I know that feeling.
Yeah. So like when I come home, like I want to play something, but at the same time I kind of just want to like veg out in front of the TV and do nothing.
Yeah.
I shockingly have been getting more into like exploring the mobile space, and tapping into what I can do in between different things with like mobile experiences. So like I carry my Xbox controller with me, and it's got the clamp on it, and so I can whip that open. And I've got where I live, I've got really good internet to home, so I mean I can stream my Xbox, I can stream my PC to my phone. And I am the IT god at my job. I run I run the entire infrastructure. So I mean we've got really great internet there. So it's kind of one of those things where I can kind of do almost any and everything from where but yeah. I want to dive into I dabbled not too long ago a little bit into Gothic Armada 2 with Jim. Exploring that game and Battlestar Galactica Deadlock and Battletech. I want to talk to these developers about one specific thing that really frustrates me about all of those games.
What's that?
Is that they have multiplayer. They do not, however, have cooperative like unless you're doing it against other people. So there's no real PvE or like co-op PvE. It's all straight versus. And that's fun up to a point, but I think it can really lack creativity and like experimenting, because if like you're trying to maybe play with a friend, you can only play against like other players, real players. You can't like take time to like maybe throw in some like weaker NPCs and then try some just ridiculous combination. It really puts a lack of like diversity in gameplay when it comes to playing with other people. Which is why I'm actually really excited about the fact that the MechWarrior mod tools have finally come out for MechWarrior 5, and I'm really kind of curious to see what players do with that. And with
there's already a mod to fix the spawn issues, by the way. That was within hours. People were like, "Spawns are fixed." It's like, okay, thanks PGI. How come you didn't fix this in 2 hours?
How do you download mods? Like there's no Steam Workshop.
See where they're putting them. It's probably like up on Next. That's where I would expect it.
Yeah, which is actually not a hard thing to use in my opinion.
Yeah,
but the other thing too about that is Jim and I were talking about this the other night. Speaking of MechWarrior, there's been some crazy developments with the stuff going on with the guys developing MechWarrior Online. If I was a betting man, and I'm not, but if I was,
I am.
And Jim definitely is. Expect to see MechWarrior Online not be alive for too much longer.
Oh well.
Yeah, I mean, Russ has already said it's not a profit-making game. They're losing money on it. So,
well, and here's what they need to do. For the love of God, here's what needs to happen: is bring back like traditional multiplayer style games where like you can do servers like Capture the Flag or domination or objective based like multiplayer, where you can actually customize the multiplayer experience rather than just being like online servers where it's just you're fighting for territory control
or for God's sake, take it back to 8 versus 8 instead of forcing a 12 versus 12, because the population's just not there now. Like, if Hunter and I got together, joined a party, and then we hit the like join a game button, right? We will sit maybe for 5 to 20 minutes waiting, because it for some reason their matchmakers
and that's the goofy thing about that too, is it's like you could be, you do a round, you wait 5 minutes, you do another round, wait 5 minutes, you do another round, wait 30 minutes.
Yeah, and it's only
5 minutes, and you're like,
but it's, if you go in and drop alone, you'll get in a match within 3 minutes. But if it's just 2 people together, forget it. Right? You get 4 people, forget it. So it's the only way to do it is play as a single person or have a full 12-man team. Yeah. And then you have to hope that there's another 12-man clan that's on. Otherwise, you'll never get match made with anybody, because it won't just put you against 12 random people. It's freaking stupid. So then they put in the Solaris thing, which is an arena fight, 2v2 or 1v1. Nobody's playing that. They wasted like a year of dev time making a thing nobody does. And then there's the community warfare thing, which like a lot of the people that are still like the dedicated players, whatever, they're playing the map war mode instead. So that further divides the community in half, but it's not a good mode. It sucks. So what they need to do is do it like the BattleTech Hairbrain Schemes game, where you have like the big map, right? And then you can pick what planet you're going to be at, and then you just fight whoever's there, right? And then the territory control could flip back and forth. Specifically, what Chrome Hounds did on the Xbox, right? You push the battle lines back and forth on the map. But still, like if I go in and I want to queue up for a community warfare thing, I might be there a half hour trying to find a match because I'm not in a pre-made clan thing. And I have a clan that I play with, but nobody wants to play the community war shit. They just want to jump in and drop and do whatever. So, and then when Russ, it was back in like October or so, and he did an AMA and was like, yeah, we're not making money on it anymore, because and they're not making any new mechs ever. They're done with that. So that's their sales stuff. right? Because that's where they completely generated all their money. It was like, hey, pre-order this mech, it's coming out. Well, they're not making any of those anymore.
So what I would like to see is in MechWarrior 5 for them to add traditional multiplayer into that. I'm not
also
talking about what
also
MechWarrior Online is, but like traditional multiplayer.
Yeah, and the big sign, right, was Phil and Darren, who ran the No Guts, No Galaxy community for those guys. They were contracted, as like the PR guys for PGI, and they just had their contract cut like a week ago, or at least he announced it a week ago. It was back toward the beginning of the month, but yeah, so they've cut those dudes loose. And it's just like, okay, well, I guess there's no community outreach anymore. And MechWarrior 5 did not review well. I played it for like a week, and then I shelved it because I'm just like, this is no fun. I'm gonna wait on mods, because mods, it's like Skyrim, right? It's like, it's buggy, it's weird, it's not great. I'm waiting on the modders to get a hold of this and fix it, just like they do every other Bethesda game, right? So it's like, new Bethesda game comes out, sit for 6 months and wait, right?
And this is what I've always said about like games, is like the modding community saves games. Like if you give real modding abilities to these things, it can literally make a difference. Which is why I feel like EA did a disservice with how they did their like online stuff with Battlefront and Battlefront 2. It completely was just a matchmaking thing, whereas I feel like if you truly opened it up to the community, you'd keep that thing alive for a long time. But they had to microtransaction it, right? They needed to have a continuous revenue stream out of it. But my thinking is why not make it so open to the public to be able to manipulate it that it makes sales, right? Just like I feel like now that the modding tools are out for MechWarrior 5, I expect to see some pretty serious stuff, and I think it's going to be awesome.
Well, maybe it'll be time to actually buy it. Maybe it'll go on sale.
I mean, like, don't get me wrong, like the initial like excitement of it was fun. Like you're like, finally a brand new MechWarrior game. We haven't had one of these since 2004. Like, yeah. But and you play it and you're getting in the feel of it, and then like after like your first like maybe 3 missions, you're kind of like, okay, all right.
Yeah, and it's basic. Okay, so here's the story. When they put the demo out before the game came out, the demo had 4 missions in it, right? There was a defense mission, a destruction mission, which is like go shoot this radar tower, right? There's an assassinate mission, which is go kill a specific enemy mech that is somewhere on the map. Go find him, right? And then the last type of mission is just like a warfare. It's like, get in there and fight until you have killed X number of enemies, and then we'll say it's time to go and you extract, right? When the game shipped, there's 4 missions. It's those 4 missions. And what they do is they randomly change what enemies spawn on the map based on the difficulty of the mission. And there's 4 different planet types. So I can do those 4 missions on a volcanic, a forest, a winter, or a desert. So 4 times 4, there's 16 combos of mission that I'm going to get. And then I fly around this giant map, and it's just like, what mission of the 4 is on this planet? I'll do that. Oh, now I'll go to this planet over here. Which one is here? So it's really like, I don't need to travel around. I could just like hit quick play, and let it auto generate missions. It's like, I just, there's nothing compelling that's going on there. And then in a game like MechWarrior 4, it was a linear campaign, like TIE Fighter, X-Wing, Wing Commander, the way games used to be, right? So it's like, okay, well, there's 25 missions, and then the game's over. Well, I can play multiplayer, or I can hit quick play, or I can build missions or whatever. But there's 25 missions, but each one of those missions was handmade by a person. It's scripted, right? And it makes sense, and there's not just random whatever that goes on. And what they've done here is what they've done here is just everything's random number generator stuff. So there is no like handmade mission. There is no whatever. So it's kind of like, yeah. So I would rather instead of having a giant open world game with nothing in it, Elite, I would rather have just 25 missions. That's a tight story thing. They get harder as you go, whatever, right? And just give me pre-scripted. Brother.
Preach.
No, so what they should have freaking done is actually put in a campaign maker and just say, hey, you know what? Instead of making this giant map, whatever, we're gonna make a campaign that's 20 something missions long, and then we're gonna give you the tool to write your own damn campaigns, and you can write your own and pass them around the community, and just make MechWarrior games forever for each other, and go, right? And that would have been great, but I don't know that. And honestly, I feel the same way about Harebrained Schemes game. Is like if it had been a series of story missions, which is what the Flashpoint stuff is, and I love that stuff, rather than just the big map that you wander around like looking for, like, okay, I need to make profit, I need to grind before I go take on this actual scripted story mission. But that's kind of JRPG-ish, but it's like I respect that more than what the hell PGI did with MechWarrior 5. I'm just not a fan of that. So yeah. But I have my concern is basically MechWarrior Online is not making money. So whether they shut it off or not, they should shut it down to kill the bleeding. I would hate to see it go, right? Like, how about just turn it over to the frickin' community, like the people that love it or whatever. Just say, hey, you know what? Here it is. Here's the code. Here's the whatever. But they can't do that because of the license crap with Microsoft. Unfortunately, I've had that conversation with them.
You would think they just like say, okay, well, here's the IP addresses so you can connect up yourself, or what have you. Just make it like a little mini server that runs it on Arduino or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it'd just be like, hey, here's we can't give you the code or anything, but yeah, like here's a little server and you can host 8v8 games in your own community, whatever. We're going to take our server down. Good night. Fine, but I guess there's license problems about that, or it sucks. But if you look back at like Call of Duty Modern Warfare, right, there's still people running private servers for that thing. If they had made that's I hate this console-itis matchmaking bullshit where it's all peer-to-peer stuff. Great, but then you need their server to matchmake it, or you can't play peer-to-peer. And it's like,
it's not
what the shit?
Then you need a server. Back when Quake was out, you used to be able to just throw an IP address in there, or even, heaven forbid, IPX, or throw an IP address in there and just connect, because the server client architecture was built in right in there. Right?
Yep. And we've had our adventures with that stuff, right? Because we had what the hell was that? It was started with an E.
Evolve.
And died.
Yeah.
Evolve. Yeah.
We're still really sad about it because it was wonderful.
It's basically like a better Game Ranger.
Still crying. Still crying.
Listen, I'm a straight up, that motherfucker like cheated out, man. I'm so mad. Sorry.
No, I'm with you, man. I'm still angry.
What was the deal with that? Like they
got bought out by Player.me.
Before that though, they were having issues with funding. And so they decided to go ahead and just like shut everything down and be like, sorry folks, we're done. Just like shut it all down. And then what was it, like a month later or less? They're like, whoa, hang on a sec. We're securing funding from another source. And then they brought everything back up. But apparently in the process, they had screwed something up on some of their servers. And so like not all the data was there. And I spent months trying to get the guy to do like a general password reset for my account. And like He'd just be like,
Oh, God.
yeah. Just keep on a lookout in your inbox. You'll get it. And like, he's like, send me a DM on Twitter. And I'm like, yeah, here you go. And here's my email. Reset it. For months, I did this back and forth. Like, Brian was there, and like out of nowhere, he's like, oh, I got some news, guys. We're being bought by Player.me, and the VPN portion, which is what everybody's actually here for, isn't going to exist anymore. And then he tried to do a Kickstarter to like revive it, and it just like failed horribly.
Mm-hmm. Still very angry about that. We still haven't found a replacement.
Nightmare of a mess.
We still haven't found a replacement.
Release that shit to the public, man. Like that. Like,
well, that's the entire problem with it. Is it was a central server. You have a billion distributed clients that can't find each other without the central server, and then they fuck the central server up. And
I mean,
like,
yes and no. Like, yes and no. It's it works on like a relay system with a central server. So like once you're connected, like you're there.
Yeah, but they didn't make that server something that anybody could host, right? It's not like I can rent an Amazon box and stand it up and hey, now I'm the new node for this thing or
right.
whatever.
Well, not in this sense, correct. Yeah, it was, but still.
I mean, I understand why they want to make money, right? And you have to own the castle in order to make money to charge people to use it. But at the point where it's like dead twice, just turn it out, man.
Well, I mean, if you're having funding problems or you're having problems keeping your company afloat, like, don't just be like, and we're gone. You know what I mean? And then be like a few weeks later being like, and we're back. And then like a few months later after that, you're like, and we're gone because we're bought by this and we're integrating these other features into Player.me. And then they don't want to do, like, Player.me doesn't want to deal with the VPN stuff. So we're just going to get rid of it.
Yeah. And I'm surprised like Hamachi didn't pick it up or something.
Hamachi or like somebody else didn't swoop in and be like, we'll take it from. I mean, there's a couple other
like Hamachi
VPNs out there.
Why the hell isn't Hamachi making a service like this?
Because they're business focused. They're not about games. They're about business.
They're business focused. But with Hamachi, you can do the exact same thing as what they were doing. The problem with Hamachi is they didn't have the control. They don't put the controls in place like what Evolve did. So the thing that was nice about Evolve is it was like a VPN, except for it only allowed for like the gaming connections to work. So you couldn't necessarily use it for a traditional VPN unless you changed settings deliberately. Like you had to go in and find the settings to like open it up for yourself. And so like you could use it as a traditional VPN, but like all that stuff was blocked off by default to like keep people safe.
Well, yeah. And if Hamachi, right, like if you and I set up a network, then you have to invite me into the thing. And then it's like, it's up, right? Mm-hmm. My machine sees your machine, and if you didn't firewall your stuff right, you're at high risk. If I'm a nasty person, so it's basically you're letting somebody else's network into your house at that point, and it's like that's bad. But with Evolve, it just did the one thing that it needed to do.
Exactly, and that's the problem that I think we're running into. There's another like Russian-based application that apparently is like Evolve was. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. And there's Game Ranger, but the problem with Game Ranger is it's a software-based thing, and it has to be integrated with the games that they have to make like. They're like, now this game works with Game Ranger, like, and you can't just like fire it up.
And they haven't added a new game to their service in God knows how long. And we didn't even know if they're still like what. We didn't even know like they could shut down tomorrow. We don't know.
There's one other final option, and that is a thing called Zero Tier. But Zero Tier is like the Linux of VPNs. So like you would have to set it up and then go full on neckbeard configuring it to do the exact same thing that Evolve did.
Right, and that's not a thing where you tell your friend like download this client, make an account.
Well, I mean, yes. So essentially, what would happen is like the person who set it up would do all of that like neckbeard work, and then you would hand it off to someone else. Be like, here, connect to this, and like you can assign. Like it's really easy to hand it off to like get people to connect, but it's the initial configuration shit that's just obnoxious. So,
And yet
Yeah, so the other
that
thing
might
that
be what we have
freaks-
to do.
Well, the other thing that freaks me out about any kind of like a VPN tunnel between people application like that is, remember I did that digging on the web and I found that whole like super scumbag business model of reselling your bandwidth from your house to
Oh, yeah,
VPN
yeah,
customers.
yeah.
Oh, geez.
yeah.
That
Right.
scares the shit out of me. So when you said like Russian VPN, nope, because it's like how are you making money? Yeah. So basically, the business model is, I
Well-
get you to install a client on your machine, right? And it brings you some benefit, but it sits there all the time and it's wired into your network stack. So when you're not using your computer, it phones home to Russia, right, or wherever, and it says, okay, this guy, his computer's idle right now. He's at work. He hasn't touched it for like an hour. So then they have another business that is, hey, do you want to do web scraping? Do you want like, home IPs? Because you can't like do things VPN wise. Like if I want to subscribe to Disney Plus and watch The Mandalorian, but I happen to be in China, right? So how do I do that? Because they'll block it. Well, I have to come from an American IP, but Disney Plus knows, all these IPs here are people on a VPN. We know that that's a VPN tunnel, so we're going to block that. So how do you get around that? Well, you need a residential IP from somebody who actually is a cable customer somewhere. So you get them to install a client on their machine, and then when their computer is idle, you sell their computer's bandwidth to somebody else. And you say, okay, you know what? We can tunnel you through Jim's computer, and then you can watch The Mandalorian. So it's like my computer downloads the episode and then sends it to them.
Well,
and it's like, holy
we didn't even have
crap.
to go that. We didn't have to go that far. They emailed me and we're like, we'd like to advertise through you. I'm like, okay, I have some questions, and they never got back
Was
to me.
it that
Never responded. The Russian company, yeah.
The Russian company, yeah. They would love to advertise through you. We want to make you an affiliate. Great. I've got questions about your service. Cricket. So,
Hey,
all right.
I have
Never responded.
I have a question. So that what the hell is that mobile game?
Last question, because
like
we
a
have to
mobile
wrap up. Last
Okay,
question.
it's like a mobile MMO thing that's like every single YouTube channel is advertising this damn thing right now. I can't remember what the name of it is.
It's a Clash of Clans like yeah.
I don't follow mobile games. I have no freaking idea.
Oh, you can't watch gaming videos without people like reading in. It's like, oh, and our sponsor is whatever the hell this game.
I would love to have a sponsor. Be nice. Someday, maybe. Anyway.
I feel like Viva the Dirt League did a thing about it, but
Anyway, folks, just a couple of quick programming notes before we wrap up. Next week on the podcast, we are going to welcome the developers of Galaxy in Turmoil. Their game is currently kickstarting, and we're going to welcome them on. I think they're doing all right. I haven't looked in a few days, but I think they're doing all right. We're going to welcome
the former Rebellion guys.
Yeah,
right,
I think so. Yeah,
they're making not Star Wars Battlefront 3.
Yeah, something like that. It looks cool.
But
looks really cool.
By the way, the game is Raid Shadow Legends. So if you get an email,
it's what who
Shadow, let me know. It's called Raid Shadow Legends, and there's like a bunch of controversy busting out, like YouTube channels freaking out about stuff with these guys. But basically, they're paying a lot of money to get all the YouTube influencer people to like shill their thing, and it's not great. But anyway, I was just curious if you've been hit by them, because once they get a hold of you, they don't let go. They spam the shit out of you.
So I was wrong. Galaxy in Turmoil is not doing well.
Excuse me.
I apologize. They have a $500,000 goal, and they're not even at $5,000. Okay.
For $5, you could get a copy.
Well, there have been Kickstarters that have failed, and then the project has succeeded anyway. So who knows? We'll be talking to them next week. Tomorrow on the stream, before we wrap up, we're going to have a flight sim stream tomorrow where I got Air Hauler 2 for Flight Simulator X, and I'm going to try and actually pass the flight test that you need to do to get missions. That's going to be tomorrow morning.
Thing where it puts like an economy in the game, and you have to like fly.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
Is that just like a free mod or something you have to?
Well,
pay
there are a
or?
couple ones. The paid one is called Air Hauler 2, which is what I got. You can get that on Steam. I got it on sale, and I got it at one of the sales recently. But there's also FS Economies, I believe, which is free.
Yeah, that's the one I'm familiar with.
Yeah, but someone in the chat was telling me how guy named Amaranth was telling me how great Air Hauler. I'm like, this is what I want for Flight Simulator, but I can't pass the test. I have failed 13 times, and it's all about the landing. Yeah. My landing are terrible, apparently.
You gotta stick it, man.
So that's what we're going to do tomorrow, is try to get me landing properly and to start taking air freight missions with Air Hauler 2. So I want to thank Joshua. First, I want to thank you for coming on and getting into the weeds, the nitty gritty of porting a DOS game to Windows, because I don't know if I've ever heard of anyone doing that, for one thing, and two, at least I love rules of engagement. So it's like, we got the rules of engagement. And I also want to thank our Patreon patrons for helping get us every dollar closer to making this a full-time endeavor. We are now at 1/5 of my rent. So if we keep going, we'll be at a third, then a half, then so on and so forth. If you want to learn how to support SpaceGameJunkie.com in becoming a full-time endeavor, you can go to SpaceGameJunkie.com/support, where we have links to Patreon, our merch store, all that stuff. Every dollar you kick our way is a big help, and we appreciate not only your dollars but your time, because that's something you can't make back. So thank you for spending time with us tonight, y'all. We really appreciate it, and we will see you back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific time, for some hilarious flight simulator action. I hope it's hilarious. Have a great night, y'all. Bye-bye.